Hello, everyone. This is John Browning, and this is another recording of the Build Your Life. This is our podcast that we do on a weekly basis. Michael DeLon is not with us today because we have a guest speaker with us today. Is Cindy Arledge, and we had you on one time before. I thought it was so amazing what you do, and I don't know anyone else who does it. Certainly not the way that you do it. And it's all about legacy planning and family planning, and it's something that's so important. And as I read your book, The Curse of Inheritance, a couple things stood out to me. I actually wrote some of them down. Number one is 85% of wealth transfers fail, in that they fail because the money's gone after, what was it, 12 months or 24 months or something. The money just disappears, right?
Well, it's funny. I've gotten a little bit updated numbers on that, John.
Okay.
And before we get into that, by the way, thank you for having me here. I love what you do, and I'm so supportive in what you do because it's all about your listeners. So let's just start there. Thank you for having me back.
Oh, I love having you here. It's great.
Well, and what I've discovered since I wrote that book is that 70% of families fail the first transfer, and less than 10% are able to keep their wealth past the third generation. So for my own family, that meant that my parents, who had worked so hard, the wealth would be gone before it would benefit my grandkids.
Yeah.
And that when I wrote the book, The Curse of Inheritance, that came out, I think, in 2016. So it's been a couple of years, that I just couldn't have that happen, and that really motivated me on a personal level and then on a professional level to make sure that other families don't have to go through what we went through.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you do this. And it's something, as you and I were talking before we started recording here, maybe I don't have all of the things that I need to have. And here I am, I'm a professional financial advisor, but that's why I have folks like you on the podcast, because what I'm really good at is helping people discover their best life, and then using one of the tools that we have in our toolbox, one of the major ones, which we call money in our portfolios, to create that best life. And part of that's legacy planning. But the actual part of putting together that legacy plan, I need people like you who can come alongside and partner, that are trustworthy. They're going to steer people in the right direction, and they made this their life's work and their passion. So again, thanks again for being on here with us. And one of the things that people can do, by the way, is they can go back to our previous podcast and listen to what you had to say there. But on this one, we really wanted to concentrate on kind of that first family meeting, sort of what it is, why it happens, or why it should happen, and what goes on during that. So I'll stop talking and let you kind of tell us, what is it? What do you mean by a first family meeting, and what goes on during that?
Well, and before we get into that, I just want to say also, John, don't feel bad about not knowing what you don't know.
Right.
I mean, seriously. And, before I, decided that this was my mission and passion life, I didn't have my stuff together. And, in some respects, we're never always done. But there's a difference between 80% done. Well, there's a difference between 0% done, 80% done, 90% done. And then, from there, it's just a continual process of improvement. So please, that's why I do what I do, because we don't know what we don't know. So let's get into some more of that, which is this initial family meeting. Mm-hmm. And, to give some background for the viewers who might not take the time to go back and listen to the other one. And, essentially, my expertise is knowing why a family will fight over an inheritance, and I know how to prevent it. And so this legacy planning piece that I put together, this program, is with that in mind, and we talked about 70% of families lose wealth in the first transfer. So the first hurdle a family has to get through is to be able to get money to the next generation. I mean, it's just so simple. And so this initial family meeting is a way for the founders, I would consider you a founder, I would consider myself a founder, to bring the family together and say, hey, I didn't know what I didn't know, and now I know something more, and I want to tell you what I've learned, because we're going to do this together. Does that make sense?
Together is the key word. Yes.
Yes, together, because here's the rub. The way traditional estate planning is set up right now is that you draft a document and you leave it in a drawer. You never talk about it with your family. And you hope that that dry document that has all the rules and all the regulations that will stand up in a court of law is going to protect your family. And while it might serve the purpose of transferring your financial assets and other assets, it doesn't prepare your family. And, there was a 30-year study done for over 3,000 families. And what they discovered is that the reasons that the wealth transfer failed is because of the family, not the documents.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because you get the personalities involved and feelings, right? I mean, legitimate, and these emotions, right? They all enter into it.
Well, and I take life in a little, because I've been through it, right? I mean, my parents, they tried to, prepare us. They had done well financially. They went from Depression era babies broke to leaving a $10 million estate, had all the legal documents. Dad even tried to prepare me. He could see trouble. Like, I didn't believe him, right? Here's what I hear so much, John. That's not going to happen to our family.
Yeah, right. Right.
And so we're in denial. It's not just a river in Egypt about what's going to happen. And yet I've yet to meet a parent that said, gosh, I hope my kids fight to the death over my money.
None of us want, right? Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be about money. I've seen a $10 million estate held up because they were fighting over grandma's stool at the lake house.
Yeah.
And so back to legacy planning, the initial family meeting, to prepare for that, I work with the founders for quite a while, because I've got to lay the foundation with the founders. You don't want to go into a meeting with your family and say, this is the way it's going to be, and this is what I want. And, because the children typically have issues with their parents growing up. That's part of the spiritual process that's part of humanity, is that we are not going to be in agreement with our parents. It's
right.
Part of what we do to break up to become adults, right?
Yeah.
And so I make sure that the founders are truly clear in what they hope to accomplish with this family meeting. Typically, it is that they want to have clarity of what they want the family and their wealth to accomplish. They want to have if you don't have a higher aspiration for your family and your wealth, then it's very difficult to retain wealth, because you're in what I call below the line thinking of scarcity. If you're in a scarcity mindset, money will disappear from you.
I say that to people all the time, and nobody believes me. And there's never been a more true statement, because it's that mindset. I speak about mindset a lot, and even people who are just starting out, if it's really easy, because they're looking at, oh wow, once I pay my rent, my loan for school, and my car payment, my insurance, oh my goodness, there's nothing left over, and they immediately go to that scarcity mindset, and it kills them. It just derails their whole plan.
Well, and because all I work with is like families and humanity and mindset and spirituality, and I mean, I go deep. I read about 70 books Well, so far I've read about 70 books this year, and we're only 9 months into the year, right?
Yeah,
And
you
I
were
read
ahead of me on that one. Yeah, I
do
thought I
what?
read a lot. Yeah.
Well, and I read like a broad category of books, because you never know what will help you when you're dealing with a heartbeat to a heartbeat. Okay. And so one of the books I read this year is called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. He actually spent a lifetime studying the vibrational level of emotion. And you have to get to courage and above to attract the things that you want. So to your point, greed, fear, even fear is below the line of courage at the vibrational level that was proven scientifically. So if you're vibrating at a fear-based mindset, you are repelling money.
Which is exactly what happens when something in your life, I don't know, and maybe it's not necessarily quote unquote bad, but when something happens to make you feel fearful, when you get that big bill from the US Treasury, you get that US Treasury, you got the seal on it, and you're like, I don't even have to read it. Like, I got one this year. I got a thing from, I'm like, oh no, what did I do? And you know what they were telling me is, they like, we think you made an error on your tax return. We're sending you an extra $1,500. But I immediately went to fear, right? And when you go there, you go to that scarcity mindset.
Well, and here, here's the thing. It's not a one and done. Wouldn't that be great? If you just like, one and done, I am abundant. But it's as we flow through life and life happens. And, I feel like we're in one of the biggest fear-based cultures that I've ever experienced, really, since the Twin Towers went down, between COVID and, all this. Our culture right now is a very fear-based culture, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that started me on this journey, this legacy planning journey, is I read a poem that was about a guy on his deathbed, and how he was laying there and he wished that he had been better at changing the world. And then he realized that he couldn't change the world because he couldn't even change his own family. And he was like, well, if I'd been better at changing my family, then maybe I could have changed the world. And then he realized, if I had changed myself, then perhaps I could have changed my family. And from that, perhaps I could have changed the world.
Yeah. I think that's in your book, isn't it? I believe I read that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is really the basis of everything that I work with families, is I help the founders change themselves. And that's why we work on conscious leadership. Oftentimes you'll be a business owner and you'll be the leader at your business, and you'll be a parent, but you don't know what you don't know, which is to take the role of a conscious leadership at the family level. And we help our families write a book of wisdom, right? I bet you have so many experiences, John, that you've been through, specific incidences that you were able to go from fear to abundance. Am I correct?
Yes, I would agree. And those things still happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know that they'll ever stop, where I go into that fear because something happens and you just go there, and move. But moving from that to abundance it's not easy, but you have to do it if you're going to be successful.
Well, I'll tell you, that's the secret sauce of what I do, because I actually have found it is easy when you know what. It's when you don't know what you don't know that makes it hard, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so one of the other many books that I read this year is written by a doctor that had a stroke back in 1996, and she recovered from it. And her name is Dr. Jill Bolt Taylor, and anybody can watch her TED Talk. When she gave it in 2008, she thought there'd be about 12 or 1,500 people that would watch it.
Right.
And now I think 30 million people have watched her TED Talk from 2008. And the question that she got from that talk was, how can I reach that state of nirvana that you reached without having to have a stroke to get there? And so her job in real life before she had her stroke was she's a brain scientist that studies the anatomy of the brain. And so after that TED Talk, she's like, well, I don't know. And so she spent a couple decades researching that answer. And she just put her book out this year, and it has changed how I work with my clients. And it's so fascinating to understand why families fight over inheritances. It's the way our brains are wired. So it's really fascinating.
You have, I probably won't be able to turn to it right now, but you have a quote in your book that you just made me think of. I'm trying to find it real quick. I won't be able to do it, but it's inheritance. You'll know it. Inheritance is viewed through the eyes of the receiver, but is it legacy is looked at through the eyes of the giver, and therein lies the big difference.
Yes, there's absolutely a huge lack of they're just seen as two different things.
Right.
And unless you recognize I'll tell you a perfect example of this. If you've ever looked at a Coke can, on one side of the can it says Coke, and on the other side it has a list of ingredients and nutritional value. And if we were sitting here and I had the Coke can, I'm like, no, my can says Coca-Cola. And you're looking at it from your perspective, you're like, no, it says nutritional value and sugar. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Well, if you turn that can around, then you can read the Coke and I can read the nutritional, and then we can have a different conversation.
You can at least have the conversation then. Yeah. And
that's the conversation that families aren't having. That's just, because we don't know what we don't know.
We don't know what we don't know. And there's this, again, fear, right? I think there's a fear of telling our children our personal stuff, right? It doesn't, it feels awkward. It just feels bad. I mean, that's really the issue with so many things, is how we feel and our emotions. But the thought that there's a way to, number one, prepare for the first meeting, both sides. And there's a process to go through, which you have, and you've been through it. And that is what you do. It can make all the difference in the world. And I know we're running up against our time, but I want to ask you two very important questions. Number one is, do you have to have $30 million to think about these things?
Absolutely not. In fact, I have to tell you just a quick story. I know of a family that the entire family no longer speaks to each other over $25,000. And if grandma had had one conversation, it could have changed everything. All she had to do is explain to her son why she had made the decision that she made regarding her total, estate, which was $25,000, so that he didn't feel like his mother loved his sister more than he loved him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I said that was the number one question, is because so many people listening to this podcast are, oh, that doesn't apply to me. And one of the things that you also say in your book is how important it is. Like, I think on the first page or first couple pages, you say, if you don't have a will, stop reading this book. Even if you're 18 years old, stop reading this book and go figure that out right now. And it's something that, especially 18-year-olds don't ever think about. But once your child turns 18, you can walk into the hospital and the doctor can't talk to you. You can't help make the decision if they're unable to do that. And another quote that I like, there's so many quotes that I like from you, is I think it, and I'll butcher it, but I believe you said, you don't have to be old to die. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. And COVID is showing that. And, for me, COVID is no different than what life was like before, except now it's harder to ignore.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things, and I'll tell you why Billy isn't being told to get a will at 18, because Billy's mom and dad don't have a will.
Yeah.
You know, 17% of seniors over the age of 72 still haven't gotten around to getting their will.
Right.
And there's reasons for that. I mean, our brains are wired to keep us safe, and it makes us, you know, feel unsafe to even think or talk about our death. You know, it's taboo. You know, we just, you know, if you want to clear a room, you know, invite me and let's talk about aging, death, and money.
Yeah.
And my poor family's gotten used to me asking total strangers if they have a will and if they have children. And then I hand them a free copy of my book.
There you go. Yeah. And I hope they read it. They don't have to read very far before they get some valuable information. You know, the second important question is, number one, I'll repeat the name of your book, is The Curse of Inheritance: How to Protect Your Family from Being Broke, Bitter, and Blaming You. It's a great book. I've read it 1.5 times so far. I'm gonna have 2 times here by this weekend, just because it's worth the second read. And what is the best way? So this is my second really important question. What is the best way for people to get in contact with you? People know that they can go to guardianrockwealth.com, hit the contact us, and get in touch with me. They know they can text the word life, LIFE, to 21,000, and they'll get all of my information. And I am happy to talk with just about anyone for free and talk to them about how to build a life, not a portfolio, because that's what I'm passionate about. But how do they get in touch with you to learn more about the secret of keeping families together and having these conversations and preparing so that you don't end up with a family that's broke, bitter, and blaming you? How do they get in touch with you?
Well, I made it easier, John. You know, you can schedule time with me at no charge. I'm like you. I'm passionate about helping families. I'll talk to anybody, no charge. And you can just go to www.meetcindyarledge.com.
MeetCindyArledge.com. I like it.
Yep.
Super simple. And there's a place there, I'm sure, where you can just fill in, you know, your name and number, whatever, and they can just click on it. And
actually, they can just go straight to my calendar and put themselves straight into my calendar, you know, and there's a little video there about legacy planning, a little introduction, shows you a picture of our family and how it's, you know, it really just, we have so much fun together because of our legacy planning. I mean, that's the difference between legacy planning and estate planning, is the legacy planning allows you to enjoy your family more fully now. So anyway, meetcindyarledge.com, get on my schedule. I'll have a free conversation with anybody who wants to do that.
This is easy, people. This is super easy, and it's so important, and yet we still avoid it. So don't avoid it anymore. Get in touch with Cindy, and you can get in touch with me as well. And until next time, Cindy, I want to have you on again because you've got so much information. So we'll do a whole series and try and help people out as much as we can.
Well, I love it, John. And you are such a cool guy. And I just enjoy spending time with you. So thank you.
See, my kids probably, they've never said anything like that I'm such a cool guy. I don't know what it is.
We can make that happen.
All right. All right. Well, thanks again for spending the time and sharing your knowledge, and we'll get together again.
In fact, I think we've already got our next topic.
I think we did, even while we were just talking. Yep.
Yeah. Let's talk about that next time.
All right, will do.